Hello everyone, good afternoon, welcome to this lunchtime edition of the CMC. I feel like I'm on an ITV lunchtime panel show. Before we start, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our sponsor of the session, who is Lime Pictures. The CMC depends massively on our sponsors, so we're really extremely grateful to Lime Pictures, makers of Wolf King on Netflix and a forthcoming sci-fi comedy for CBBC, for supporting this session. So thank you, Lime Pictures. So with me on the panel to talk about the Bridge audience, please join me in welcoming to my left, Maria Doolan. Maria Doolan is the Head of Content Partnerships and Distribution at Miraculous Corp, where she's been central to the global success of Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. With a background in brand building and international strategy, she previously played a key role in developing the Pocoyo brand. Known for her entrepreneurial mindset and collaborative approach, Maria combines marketing expertise with a passion for creative partnerships and long-term brand growth. Maria, what was your favourite character when you were younger?
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who? Which one?
All of them, but I was Layla.
You were Leela.
Yeah.
Amazing. Welcome, Maria.
Bikini and all.
At that young age? Goodness me, we need to have a word later. Next to Maria is Beth Gardiner. Beth is the commissioning editor of animation at BBC Children's, where she works across CBeebies titles, including Pre Penguins, Betty Buys, and the upcoming Piggy Builders. Before joining the BBC, she was creative producer on PJ Masks for 5 series, and previously served as VP of Development and Current Series at Disney Junior, where she oversaw hit shows including Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and the BAFTA-nominated Jungle Junction. Beth.
Yes.
What was your favourite film?
Oh. you switched it up.
I'd like to keep you on your toes.
Yeah. Well, it's probably not kid appropriate.
That's all right. If you watched it as a child.
Yeah. God.
Oh my God,
I mean,
this is such a hard question.
This is not a hard question. I was sort of thinking, like, is it kid appropriate? It was Grease.
Oh, amazing.
It was Grease, yeah.
Did you have a favourite song? 2 questions in one there.
Nikki just said "Hopelessly Devoted." I don't think that was it. I loved the sort of the song when they were on the cars singing.
Grease Lightning.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for your memories and welcome to the panel. Next to Beth is Nikki Currett, who is the Managing Director of Sherbet Research, a specialist agency focused on kids, teens and families. With over 20 years at the helm, she's worked closely with major clients including the BBC, Hasbro, ITV and Nickelodeon. Nikki started her career as a primary school teacher, brings a deep understanding of children's lives to her research, ensuring insight-led strategies are rooted in real-world experience. I'm going to give you a slightly easier question, otherwise we'll never finish. Favourite TV series?
TV series? Top Cat.
Because?
Well, I think I always, and I just looked at it before, I just always really loved the end, and I wanted to know what it was like to sleep inside a bin. With earplugs.
Interesting child aspiration.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. And last but no means least, at the end, is Katie Barber, who is the development producer at A Productions, where she leads original development and IP strategy across the studio slate. She brings a deep experience of early-stage project development, talent discovery, and editorial oversight. Prior to joining A Productions, Katie spent over 5 years at Disney EMEA, where she managed the regional development slate and contributed creatively to titles including Chip and Dale, Park Life. Katie, I know it may be several recent years ago, but what was your favourite story?
It's my favourite story.
Your favourite story?
What, like TV content as opposed to from a book?
Could be, if that's the direction you want to take it.
The one that springs to mind And I watched this religiously, was the Powerpuff Girls movie, because I was so obsessed with the series. And Mojo Jojo was just the best character. It was a great word to say, and he was just so devilishly naughty. So probably Powerpuff Girls movie.
That's a real diverse range of memories there from us. Some which we're best probably not reveal, but thank you very much. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of this panel, I'm going to play you a clip of some of the work. Let's have a look at this reel.
Everybody say flippers! Flippers!
There's something quite invigorating about stepping outside your comfort zone.
This is amazing!
Come on, let's go!
I'm king of the berg!
Oh, isn't this brilliant?
Lovely animation there. Thank you, everyone. So before we begin, I'm going to ask with a question which might seem obvious, but I think it's got many nuanced answers. What exactly do we mean by bridge audience? Bridge audience refers to that in-between age group, kids who are moving from preschool to tween, no longer little kids but not yet teens. They're developing independence and are more discerning in their media choices. But this is not a new audience, or is it? So I'm going to begin by asking the panel whether they feel there's a consensus in the industry about what the age range the bridge audience is. And also, why is it the phrase has only recently started to be used in our vernacular? Surely there's no difference between bridge and upper preschool. Katie, let's start with you. Who do you think of when we talk about the bridge audience?
So when I think about bridge when I was young, shows like Arthur and Hey Arnold, because they were probably the first ones I remember feeling like I was doing something a bit more grown up by watching them, and they were kind of after that prime time after school thing. And I'm one of 4 siblings, so catering to all of us was quite difficult, and we had to find something where my older sister wasn't going to be difficult, because I feel like older siblings can often be the ones that kind of bring kids into the older content earlier, so we had to find something that she wasn't going to complain about, whilst also being suitable and watchable by my youngest sibling. So Hey Arnold and Arthur were ones that we went to quite regularly, because we were big BBC fans at the time. And then nowadays, thinking about what bridge shows mean, because it does differ so much from commissioner to commissioner, like from whatever channel you're watching it on, especially with streaming services. So I think it's quite hard for people to necessarily pin down, especially before they actually make it onto said channel. I worked on a show where we thought it was 6+. We were absolutely certain that this was going to fit into that bracket. Ended up on the junior channel instead, because the younger kids really liked puppies. So it's difficult, I think, to define.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I wonder, Beth, what's changed that's made us start talking about this audience with a renewed sense of urgency?
I mean, I think, thinking for the BBC, that it's a gap in the market. I think that's what at CBeebies, Kate Morton, who is in charge of CBeebies, really saw an opportunity for us to start making shows for upper preschoolers, bridge, which we've defined as an age group of 5 to 8, but I think that it is unknowable. Kids are different at different ages, but sort of that's what we have in mind, that age span, when we're thinking about making new content. I think there's not enough for that age group.
And do you think this is a new desire, if you like, that there's been an opening in recent years to cater for this age group because they were under-catered? Are you seeing it as a cyclical thing, or?
Well, you and I had talked about it. Like I just feel like it is cyclical, but I hope it's here to stay. That when I was growing up, it felt like there were only bridge shows. We didn't really have a dedicated preschool channels. It really catered to 5 to 8 year olds. You had just started primary school. I think that we've just sort of identified there's not enough for that age group, and we're really well served in the preschool space and maybe in upper older kids space. But this is an opportunity for us all.
Yeah, interesting. Maria, do you think there's a more flexibility across the different platforms and formats when it comes to creating content for this audience?
Yeah, I think each platform is different, but I think that the Bridge audience starts when children are able to make their own choices, and that actual gap of content, I think, is not under threat, but with YouTube and another universe opening up to us, you either lock them into traditional content at that point in time and they keep watching television, or you lose them. So they go off to YouTube, where the content is faster, it's stickier, it's so many other different things. But I think that we have to try and maintain them under traditional broadcast, because that's where they're going to learn life's lessons. Because a preschool child who then moves on to a Bridge program, there's so many important lessons there and messages that we need to give them before they go to YouTube or these other platforms. So.
That's really interesting. I'm going to come back to that point later on, because I think that's a really important observation. Nikki, you've worked with kids in this age group for years and years.
Yeah.
From a research perspective, what stands out as most distinctive about this group's behaviours, attitudes, and emotional development?
Well, I think moving with Maria's point, it's the first time that they really have proper choice. So from a research point of view, you need to talk to them as well as their parents. But they're a really interesting age group, because they really, and when they choose content, it's probably the first real choice they are making. And parents kind of give over that choice. I think in recent, or if you go back, often it was a choice parents happily gave to them because it was still within that linear framework. And now I think, again, last week I met a parent who's like, she didn't say it in these words, but it was like, help me a bit, because she had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I asked them, what do you watch? And they said, YouTube, 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 YouTube. And I said, and the mum was like, and I don't want them, I want them to watch other things. And so parents need help, but I think research-wise, it's important to, from the age of 4 or 5, they have opinions. They can tell you what they want. It's a skill to be able to talk to that age group, and an art, but I think they can really help you and tell you very clearly in the programmes what it is they want and what it is they don't want. I don't want to jump in, but they know what they want at that age.
So as content creators, then we should be introducing very clear messaging into the 4 to 7, 5 to 7 demographic content.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think parents don't necessarily watch what they're watching at that age anymore, but they still hear. So they can still, and if kids come in and go, I just watched something and this was happening, or the parents will then, that's a talking point, which is amazing, so that they can, again, I did some research recently, and the moral of the programme they're watching was never judge a book by its cover. Can you imagine a 5-year-old coming into their parent to say, I want to talk about this, and it taught them stuff. So all those things are really important, and whilst the parents aren't necessarily watching with them anymore, they're still hearing, they still want to know. And sometimes, that's where these programmes all have a place, because they're less likely to hear what's going on if it's only YouTube.
That's really interesting. And coming back to your point, Beth, about the audience and perhaps, preschool being superserved and this demographic being underserved, how does the BBC define and approach the content then for the Bridge audience if content is moving over to an on-demand world, and the channels, so CBBC has a very preschool focus and CBBC is older skewing, and this audience just sits in the middle. In a linear world, that sort of is irrelevant?
No, I don't think it's irrelevant. I was just thinking, what Nikki was saying, that when an older preschool show, something like Peary Penguins, which I worked on, which is Bridge, it was commissioned because we wanted a Bridge show. it plays on CBeebies, and it, for me, and I think everybody at CBeebies, it's a protected space. Our parents are just as important as our kid audience, and our parents need to feel safe about letting our, an older kid, 5 to 8, watch within that space. That said, Period Penguins also lives on iPlayer under the CBBC brand. So, I think that for now, like those two spaces on iPlayer, CBBC, we're really lucky that we can, there are some properties, Big Lizard is another, that belongs on both. You and I talked about back in the day that Arthur lived on both.
Yep.
That it's a, it's a good way to sort of, I don't want to call it a delivery system, but I think that CBeebies is a protected space. So when parents are a little unsure, when you have a 5-year-old that's trying out their own choices, that they feel safe about it. So I think, for now, like having those two delineated channels and spaces works for the BBC.
It's great. We always used to talk about the journey that you take the audience on from the preschool space to the older space, and just introducing them, allowing them to dip their toe.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a very different environment we're operating in now, and that's why Arthur, back in the day, sat on both of them. It was a bit young for CBBC and a bit old for CBeebies, but happily sat taking the audience on a journey with them. Katie, so from a development perspective, what are the narrative or tonal challenges that you have to consider when developing for this age group?
I think one of the key things is not patronising your audience, because I think if you're making a show that you're trying for the older part of the Bridge audience, so say if you're aiming your show at an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old's going to be very receptive to that because you watch aspirationally. Well, most kids do. Kids also go downward. We talked a little bit about that in the prep. But I think that if you can aim towards the end of that bracket, you'll naturally fit quite well into it. So I think, and that's not just the stories as well. So structurally, you don't have to limit yourself. For example, preschool are often quite hesitant about things like flashbacks and like playing with time, because it can be quite a complicated structure for a preschooler. But in Bridge, you can be a little bit looser with that. You can experiment a little bit more and challenge your audience. So when you're writing stories, you can think about it from that perspective. But visually, we talked it's so hard to, if you've got something that looks young and a kid, an 8-year-old goes, that looks babyish, it's not for me. It's very easy for them just not to clock in at all. They won't stay there to figure out that the story's really sophisticated for them. So you have to kind of also look at your visuals and ask yourself, can an 8-year-old appreciate the artwork here long enough to find out that the stories are made for them as well? So it's not just structurally sophisticated. I think you can also rely on your kids that are watching it to emotionally engage with it. So you should have a level of kind of emotional intelligence. If the stories are emotionally driven and character driven, that teaches them something. We talked about like morals and including those in it for the parents, but kids want to know about, like, this character felt like this at the beginning and it doesn't feel like that anymore because they've had this journey. So the big thing I think is just don't patronise them, and maybe you aim at that end bracket and bring those kids up to speed.
Nikki, do you want to add anything to that about the complexity of storytelling?
Yeah, well, just you were talking, I think often from a research perspective, I've done so many shows where it looks really young, and then the narrative's aimed at the 7 and 8-year-olds, but I make them watch it in research. That's part of the research. So, and I'm doing 2 shows currently where I'm making them watch it, and they love it, and I'm like, and would you watch it? And they're like, no. Because and why? Because it's for babies. Okay. That or those kinds of words they'll use, because they can't sometimes get away from the visuals. And then the 4-year-olds that you speak to love the way it looks, but you can tell they haven't understood a word of what's gone on. A word. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing a show at the moment, and I even said, this is the name of the show, and I said, what was the show called? And the 4-year-old was like, I don't know. So there's so many different things, and I think what we haven't always said is that a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old are just miles apart. So a 4-year-old can just be 4, and a 7-year-old can be nearly 8, and the milestones that you go through between the ages of 4 and 8 are massive. So it's always quite hard to get everyone in those age groups, but I think it's a real skill. which these shows that you guys do, to be able to visually grab those ages as well as what's going on in the storyline. And the storylines for this age group, it's so important that there's fairness, that there's morals, another thing that's come up recently is that there's someone in charge.
Oh.
Someone in charge, not necessarily, just those kind of things for this age group. Like, if it's just a load of people, but who's in charge? And again, I'm working on a program at the moment, and no one quite knows who's in charge, and that's hard for them to sort of to then develop. There's loads of characters, but it's like they're looking for answers, and sometimes it's not given, and then they get frustrated.
So that's really interesting. So they're looking for an authority figure, someone to say, yes,
that's
this
relevant
is the right
to their
way.
world.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to necessarily be a parent, but like, who's leading? Who's the person who's taking the show forward? Because otherwise they get confused sometimes in what's going on.
And is it in like a storyline or in a series? Do kids need to know it's this person's or this character's series?
I think, because I only probably in each of the show they just, and then when I'm using their words, but someone in charge, but like sometimes it doesn't make sense for this age group if they don't know where the story's going or who's leading the story. And then you can see it in research times when they feed it back, because you see they don't understand.
Yeah.
So and when there's a clear story and a clear moral without patronising them, which is, all of these things are hard. Then they get it and it fits, and then they'll talk about it and want to watch it more.
Maria, I think probably it's a good time to talk about Miraculous at this juncture, because it's a super successful series with a ginormous fan base, particularly in this demographic. Was that always the intention?
I don't think so. But I wasn't there in the beginning. But I have the absolute honour to work on this show. But everything that's being discussed on this panel, I can relate to 100%. But the shows that ZAG have created, and now Miraculous is part of the Miraculous Corp company, they're all based on solid, universal themes, values, morals, and that is what engages kids all over the world. Another one of the key themes there is not patronising the audience. So they speak to them as adults in a way that is a unique French voice. I feel that with different cultures, children are spoken to in different ways. In the more French or Latin-based countries, they speak to children as though they are adults or equals. So this is very important. The morals there's always a moral to the story, and it's aspirational. When we talk about who's in charge, Ladybug or Marinette is in charge, but she's not really, it's not something that she was looking for. So this was something that was thrust upon her. She's clumsy, she's not your typical superhero, but she's taken on the challenge, and kids identify with that. They're like, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the key themes. And again, there's a dual layered approach to the storytelling. So the 4-year-olds, they love, the action, the bright colours, the outfits. From a design perspective, it's a unique design. So it's not designed for little kids. It's not designed for, it's just a unique design that's universal. So each age group sees something different within the design, and it's a very appealing design. When I first saw the Marinette designs back in, I think it was 2012, because I had a very strong relationship with their master toy partner, I was scandalised, to tell you the truth. I was like, oh my God, that's a little bit too much. Yeah. But the audience has changed, kids have changed, and once you get past that first kind of look at the characters, they are so relatable that they're immediately appealing. And the 12-year-olds, they really do resonate with the emotional journey. So there is a journey within each episode, and each character goes on a journey. So yeah, I think that it's incredibly well written and devised, and the universe that has come from the minds of Thomas Struck, who is the original creator, Nathaniel, who has done all of the design, Jeremy Zag, who put it all together as kind of like the master producer, with the vision of where the show needs to go. I mean, it's quite brilliant, really, and it's unique. It's a unicorn show.
So based on Miraculous, what elements of the storytelling then do you think other producers in other countries can take from that and learn and apply to their 5 to 7 or 4 to 7 or bridge audience?
I think that it's a multi-layered, and at the essence, Miraculous is actually a telenovela. So it's an extremely expensive to produce telenovela. For kids. And if you look at telenovelas in other cultures where they work, this is one of the most, where they're usually live action, this is one of the most sticky kind of content that is produced and on channel. And this is the same thing. So it's the way that the narrative arcs are put together, it's the suspense. I mean, superheroes, what is there not to love? So it appeals to such a wide audience in that respect.
Beth, we touched in the conversation just there about how the content might be culturally specific. Do you think, with your global view, that certain markets are better at appealing to this particular audience than others?
I think that as producers in this room, and then also, people that work at networks, that we have to be good co-producers and good partners. So I don't know if there are some markets that really lend themselves to it. I think we have to be aware of different cultural differences that Maria just touched on. I know that Big Lizard is an example where France Television aged it down and we aged it up and met in the middle for a perfect bridge show. So I think, we all have partners that we need to work with to sort of understand the cultural differences, but and not dilute the creative vision. I think that's the key.
And if you have a very kind of the base is universal, then you can localize in each territory.
Yeah.
So according to the local cultural tastes. So if you have people on the ground, especially when you're talking about a brand that's 360 and you're doing consumer products, et cetera, you can actually localize that content off screen to become much more attractive to the local audience. I mean, we do that a lot in Latin America, for example.
So that's off screen, but the series remains the constant.
Yes.
But how you sort of talk to your audience changes.
So, that makes sense. For us, the content is king in that it's universal. So we don't touch the content, but then you can localize with boots on the ground.
Yeah, that's smart.
Because obviously, Nikki, coming to you, so obviously, a 5-year-old in the UK is very different wherever you are. Each child is different. So when you're applying that internationally, you've got a smorgasbord of different learning abilities and cultural relevance. So how as producers, when we're having to do more and more co-productions, can we possibly continue making shows for such a broad demographic where it varies so wildly?
Well, I think, or sometimes bring it back, I'd like to simplify things. I always think that kids are slightly different to they were years ago, but fundamentally they're not. Fundamentally, like if you were to put all the different things that, and the way kids develop at what stages and ages and stages is the same. The kid's a kid. And those things don't change. What the world around them changes. And there's cultural things. I've worked on lots of programs over the years internationally. And sometimes it's tweaks, sometimes it's just saying, the consumer product side of things we need to change, and sometimes certain shows are just never going to work in certain countries, and I that's happened because I think culturally is the biggest thing that changes, but I think kids fundamentally in this age group are the same. They just go through the stages at different times. So you can get a 4-year-old will be different because of the influences on that 4-year-old worldwide. They might have siblings. They might live, like I've done work in Brazil where there's things going on outside the houses in Rio that you would never imagine. I mean, I remember I worked on a project, it was a bridge show where in Brazil there was it was scary shootings and things going on outside the house, and I did the same project in Australia and there was a kangaroo in the garden. So there's different things are going on, but like a 4-year-old will develop, everyone will go through the stages but just at different rates. So a 4-year-old with an older sibling will be more like a 6-year-old often, and they'll watch content younger. And then sometimes, again, recently I've done work with 9-year-olds who we felt like we should put them into the tweens, but actually they were more like the 7-year-olds. So I think it's just something that's why research is important, and that's why talking to them is important. But fundamentally, always remember, kids they are still the same. Developmentally, they go through stages, and that will always remain. That will never change. What's around them changes, and that's what we need to keep talking about. But fundamentally, developmentally, that doesn't change. It hasn't in the 30 years.
And I guess kids, still want stories.
Yeah.
And they want
And they still learn through
stories.
play.
Yeah.
And they still want to do imagination, and they still want to do all the things that they've always wanted to do. They just, right now, the biggest problem for them probably is just the choices.
And the overwhelming abundance.
Overwhelming, and more so, if anything, for parents, because for the kids, they don't know any different because it's just what they have. But for parents, sometimes you can just they never use those words, I say, but they need that help sometimes to navigate, because kids don't realise that they need that help because it's just the way it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Beth, so looking at this differently, so you've had a great career in preschool storytelling, and you've recently worked on your first Bridge show.
Yeah.
What surprised you as a producer and executive about how you've had to change how you give notes and feedback and think about the audience?
And it was I don't know why I'm on this panel, because I've worked on one Bridge show and it really scared me. So I will say that on Period Penguins have a really lovely team. One is Massimo Finati and Tess Cumming, who's the producer. Massimo's the creator, and they had just come off of Quentin Blake's Box of Treasures, which is gorgeous. It is really nuanced, older kid, up to family, and Massimo's designs, which are really graphic and funny and silly, sort of sold this idea in for Period Penguins. So I was immersed in really young series, and they were immersed in a very family series, and we really needed to bridge the gap. So one thing, I had a hard time reading the outlines. I'm really embarrassed to say, because it was so complicated. I was like, wait, what's happening? And then this character does this. So something that we did often in preschool is we have the discovery and the learn, and I can hear people sort of groaning in the audience, but it really helped me sort of say, okay, this story is about this. So the lesson is really clear. So we didn't put it on the script, but every time we talked about the notes, I was like, so this story is about this is so, and it was some sort of a replaying for me of this is the learn, this is the feeling of we want our audience to take away from this series. And the other thing that we talked a lot about, and again, it was all conversations, is that it should have been, heart is overused, but it should have been optimistic and sweet as a sort of whole package of the takeaway. It was a really happy series. So we sort of figured that out, and I feel like I brought that from preschool world into their world. And then for me, I had to get really used to really faster pace, witty dialogue, sarcasm, flashbacks, all the things that in preschool you're sort of taught not to, for a younger audience, and also farts and burps, so all of those things. So I feel like I evolved as an exec as well, but it was all conversations with Massimo and Tess of how far to push it.
That's really interesting. And do you think, as you hopefully you will do more Bridge shows, you will consider things like duration as well as tone? So in recent years, the preschool episode running length is reduced to about 7 minutes now. Is the Bridge audience, does that offer an opportunity to go back to longer storytelling, or is this a general shift in kids' attention spans?
No, I think I think it depends on the show. I think that I feel like a anime Bridge show could go longer to maybe 22. That would be really fun as a storyteller, and people working on the scripts. I think what's so great about this time where we are all able to make series is that genres and formats can change. Kids are changing. We just talked about kids are kids. But and to offer something different. Yeah. I think that would be really exciting to offer a 5 to 8 year old something that's a little bit longer, a musical, an opera.
Big, I don't know, big High School Musical for kids.
Yeah.
For the bridge audience.
Yeah.
High School Nursery, I don't know. What do you think, like, thinking about this bridge audience then, so is there a pitfall in specifically developing and producing something for a bridge audience? Are we alienating the 7 and 11-year-olds sometimes too much?
I mean, is that a question about the broadness, like of having to cater to all
Are we
kids?
trying to encapsulate
Yeah.
too many kids in the demographic?
I think I think that's across the board. I would say the same thing in preschool, that if you try and get all kids, that you are going to deliver a series that is maybe 60% successful. But when you sort of cater to a creative vision that connects to the audience, you're even more successful. Like the series that I really rate and work, like they come from a creator who has a clear voice. Miraculous is a clear voice. And I think like trying to cater to all kids is really difficult. And it just sort of diffuses the stories you want to tell.
100%. Yeah, we found that when I was working on Pocoyo, for our commercial ambitions, we wanted to be upper preschool, but we weren't. We were first
Yeah.
preschool. We were the first things that kids wanted to watch. And at the end of the day, we tried to move, we tried to evolve, but you just need to be happy where you are. Like, if that's the target that you're conquering or you're appealing to, that's the target you need to
Yeah.
stay with.
And were there any commercial pressures? Not
Yes.
specifically about this. Are there often some commercial pressures?
Yes, because play patterns have very specific targets. So if you have commercial ambitions, you really do need to make sure that when you're in development, that your development does correspond with those play patterns, because retail has its own language. So if you want to be on shelf, you need to be within these parameters. Yeah. So it's challenging.
So moving on, I realise we're running out of time, but thinking about the content and audience evolution and the breakneck speed at which platform consumption is changing, I'd like to think about how we serve this audience now and how it might evolve in the future. We heard a lot this morning about YouTube. Every year we hear about YouTube. This morning it was YouTube every other word. In particular, maybe I'll talk about Miraculous here, because I think Miraculous, and you can talk to this better than I can, but as an audience member watching the show, it's sort of kept the audience on a journey with it as it's evolved and brought in new audience members. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, how the evolution of the show itself has helped?
From series or seasons 1 to 5, it's been serialized. And so the audience has gone on a journey. And the majority of the viewers did start when they were very young. So when the show was launched, our core target was the 4 to 5 year old. And so what the creators rightly did was they made the show more sophisticated, and they did go on a 5-season arc. Listening to the fans, and I will say, because we don't have our creators here today, they do have false profiles on social media, so they do engage with the fans and have very in-depth conversations, but they listen to what they're demanding. So on season 6, the characters have grown, so now we are actually catering back to the teen audience, which started with the show at 4. So on the streaming platforms, if we have a new audience, they always go to season 1. So season 1 does cater to the younger audience. But now the fans, the tweens, the teens, are on season 6 and they're loving it. So there's a huge evolution there, and we're maintaining the audience from beginning to end. And we have this huge Gen Z audience, which is like very, very unusual. And it's because of the romance and now the characters are a couple. And so there's the whole kind of like challenge of, how do they be a couple? As in real life, they still don't know what their secret identities when they're superheroes. But there's a whole nother level to becoming a couple, and it's great. So there's a lot of material there for at least another few seasons. So
That's fantastic.
That's
That
great.
doesn't really often happen
No.
in animation, does it? It happens in live action, but
Yeah.
not so much in animation.
And to start in YouTube, for your series 1, if you're like want to get into Miraculous on YouTube, and then it brings you to linear. That's interesting.
Yeah. And from our YouTube perspective, we've always worked with clips, and only recently have we launched our full episodes.
Okay. Wow.
So we've seen, very
Yeah.
differing behaviour from the fans.
Are there any other animated titles that you can think of that have followed a similar pattern? Katie, you were talking about Avatar earlier on.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm like massive fan of it. I don't know. I don't know how to be honest, because that's so serialized. It deals with such massive like world political like war. There's like genocide. It's like big, but it's gone on, and it's one of those ones that expands into like later years. Like I've introduced adults to it who are fans, just general fans of kids content, and I think that it's one of those things that translates really well into older audiences. And I tried to introduce my 4-year-old godson into it, and he was like, I don't get it. And I was like, it's probably not for
Not
you,
too
to be
complex.
fair. But knowing that he'll probably get into it when he's older, because it's a fantastic series. But I kind of lightly touched on Dalmatian Street, 101 Dalmatian Street, which I was a coordinator on when I was working at Disney. And we had such fun writing those stories, and it's a brilliant show. And it ended up, there was a time where they started putting episodes on Disney Junior, and we were going, the kids aren't going to understand what this is. And it was a really good gateway for them, and now it works on Disney Plus. So the introduction of a streaming service kind of means that you don't necessarily have to say, now that you're 5 years old, you are in the bridge audience. Here is some bridge content, because kids will navigate that way. They'll start watching content from Disney Junior and think, I'm above this now, where can I go? And hopefully with the algorithms, they should be able to kind of naturally make their way to the content that will lead them to the older stuff. So that's the one that springs to mind. Well, I've also worked on Chippendale Park Life, which is those stories got really complicated. They're like 7 minutes, but they're utterly genius and brilliantly funny. My 7-year-old, so he's 7 now, but he loved it when he was 5 because it was really funny, and it was no dialogue, so he could watch it with his younger brother. So I think sometimes when you make something that you think is for a certain audience, sometimes older, it translates younger without you needing to do too much work for it. And it's part of that not patronising them that kind of means that they're going to
That's
kind
a
of
real
work their
skill,
way up
isn't
there.
it, to make something that the young ones still understand, though. That's
Some of those episodes probably not, but for the majority of them, they definitely loved it, so it was good.
Well, I mean, we know, don't we, that some older children go back to their favourite preschool shows as a bit of a comfort blanket.
Yeah.
So, there's probably the same in this demo. But you made a good point there about streaming and VOD services. So if the content is just in a big old depository called Kids and Family or whatever it is, do we need a bridge audience, or do you just say this is for a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and you go very, very super niche?
I think it still has a space, but it's not necessarily a space that we dictate when they watch it. I think it's an important part of, because like you say, the difference between a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old is so big that having stuff that sits in the middle is great for them to then make their way to the stuff that is more too sophisticated for them to understand. So I think it still has a life, but it doesn't, so if you look at CBeebies versus CBBC, iPlayer is a great place for them to find bridge content without trying too hard, because when you go on the CBeebies site, it will have older kids might like this to try and draw you into the stuff that is like a little bit more like stepping stone, right?
Yeah, and they graduate out of CBs. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about like it like when a kid says, "Oh, I used to watch that when I was a baby." Like it's like the
when
kiss
they're
of
4.
death. Yeah, when they're 4. But then if that same series exists on an iPlayer where they can find it, and there's no like you're a baby if you watch this, it sort of frees it up, I think, for kids to feel freer to make that choice.
So do you think digital then favours bridge more than linear?
I think it just finally gives it like a really accessible home for it, maybe, because putting something on a younger channel, a kid might look at the younger channel and be like, that is for people too young for me. And so they might navigate kind of away from that content. So you can put it on both, like Arthur did. Arthur was across both, but when I think about it as a CBBC show. And that's probably because as a child I was like, this is more grown up.
Yeah.
This is a stepping up for me. So I do think that streaming services are really helpful, especially iPlayer, where you've got so much content to choose from, and it really guides you through to that. But I don't think that it means that you don't need that content anymore. It just means that you've got more room to make choices about what you're watching.
We're going to come to questions in the audience in a few minutes, so if you have any, we'll be with you. Just picking up on that point, Katie, there. So do you, and this is to all of you, but do you think the digital platforms like YouTube and, Roblox, where the characters and the content are there, are better organically now at targeting this audience?
I mean, I think Roblox or Minecraft or those I think those feel different to me because you're a participant and you're part of it, and it's really successful and wonderful for our audience to create things. I don't know, I don't know how funny they are. I don't know how slapstick and surprising they are. Or in terms of storytelling, and maybe because I haven't spent that much time looking for it, but I think I really admire Roblox and Minecraft and those things that you build, and you can immerse yourself in a world, and you're a participant. You're making the story, but sometimes you really want to be told a story.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think kids, when they're in school, and so the reason, aside from what the content may or may not be, when it comes to YouTube, when it comes to Roblox, Minecraft, all those things, it's what they talk about in school. Okay. They don't talk about TV shows in the same way. So when you're 7 and all your friends are talking about Roblox, Minecraft, YouTube, oh, you're on YouTube Kids, well, I'm on YouTube, all that kind of stuff, it then filters down. So again, I've seen 7-year-olds with a 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old wants to do what the 7-year-old sister or brother's doing. But they talk about YouTube, they talk about Roblox.
And they say they're influencers and they all have their own channel.
Yeah.
No one does.
So that it gets talked about, and that's whether they do it better or not isn't
It's like a currency.
It's what is a currency. I need it for me as a 7-year-old. I tell you, I'm on Roblox. I do Minecraft. I watch Minecraft on YouTube. All of those things make that 7-year-old feel like they're quite grown up.
Yeah,
I suppose it's also accessibility, because there are kids that maybe don't have access to private channels, and if they, of course, there's always BBC and there's other content that's public, but if you're working on YouTube, then you've got a world of choice that you're making, and it's accessible to everyone because it's free. So the kids that don't watch TV, or they've got their own tablet or whatever, they're making choices that everyone can make, but then they're able to lead other people there. Whereas if you're watching CBeebies or CBBC, maybe they're looking at that content this is presented to me on linear. Maybe they aren't on iPlayer for whatever reason, but they're looking at that from a linear, this has been presented to me. YouTube, anyone can access it. So kids that are from a underprivileged background can still access YouTube. So it's one of those kind of new routes, I suppose.
But I think if we're talking about the lower bridge audience, they need guidance. So
I agree.
We can't ever let them kind of go in there straight away. So I think that's the key kind of once they come out of preschool, it's we're talking about this being a first time mum, and you were doing your first bridge program. It's the anxiety, and you want it to be all perfect, and we don't want sassy language in there, and it has to be something that I want my child to watch. So we have to try and maybe gatekeep to a certain age. And then it's inevitable. Yeah. But YouTube, once you get stuck in the algorithm.
We've heard a lot about that today already. If we had a blank checkbook, so money's no option and no platform pressure at all, what should we be doing for this audience? I'll start with you, Katie, and then we'll work down.
It's such a big question. I think you could be really experimental with durations and things like that. And if there's no pressure, you could do something completely original. I mean, it's not what this panel is about at all, but there's a lot of pressure to come up with existing IP for audiences. And if there was no pressure for views, and you can introduce characters to brand new characters that is massively reachable, then that's a wonderful thing to do. But really challenging them with stories that maybe they're not expecting. So I think it's the not patronising them, but really shocking them, really surprising them. That I'd love to get to have a go at that playground and not have too many compliance rules anyway.
It was
within reason.
In the Q&A this morning, Julian Board made a note that there's a real opportunity for lots of new original content. So maybe this is something that we should be pushing really for this demographic. Nikki?
I don't know if I can add anything. I think it's everything that's been said in some ways, and I think just not patronising, remembering, you know, the visuals, the story, making it clear, all the different things by understanding the age group, what they look for, and they just, you know, they're stepping out into the world at 4 for the first time in some ways, and they realise there's a world. Developmentally, it's the first time they go, okay, well, it's not just me and my family. There's things out there that I didn't realise there was a world. So tell me about this world, and tell me, but like. Just tell me in a way that's relevant to me, but also where I can learn and where I can understand, but also, you know, in some ways making it, the world seem like a good and happy place still at this age, rather than all the things that are going on. And ultimately, this age group, the most important thing sometimes is like they want to see problems, they want to see, but it's got to be fair.
Yes.
And it's got to
yes.
be resolved, not in the preschool way in some ways, but, you know, a step up.
Yeah.
But all those things are still quite important, because I think whilst they are making choices and they are that little bit older, they are still kids.
Yeah.
They still want to play, they still want to do all those things, but, you know, if content can give them an insight into that slightly aspirational world that they're about to jump into, then that's great as well.
Yeah. That was excellent. Sorry. No, I was just saying, it was just, I mean, I just think that at CBeebies, there's an opportunity, and it's not just a CBeebies thing. I think everybody in this room, it's an opportunity that the audience is underserved at this time. So I think a variety, as Katie said, of different characters, formats, genres. You know, again, it's also an opportunity for singular creative voices. That, you know, the shows that work well really have a clear voice. Yeah. And I think, you know, that, you know, we do have pressure to, like, here's known IP, here's this, and I think to have like someone that has a message that they want for this audience, that remembers that really great time when you're stepping out of your family and into friendship groups, it's a really fertile playground for stories.
Maria, do you have anything to add? I mean, they've covered
After all
quite
that
a bit of
amazing
ground.
I'll just summarise. So,
Have you had chat on under the table?
I 100% agree with the original content. We have to start making more original content, the singular voices. I mean, there were periods in our industry where there were these amazing singular voices, and amazing shows were made because there wasn't as much fear there. There was a space to make these shows, and I think we need to go back there, because otherwise what's happening with our creativity? These shows, they need to be fun, they need to be meaningful. If you're taking universal values or just themes that are globally resonating, I think that's what we need to be doing. So not being scared.
I think great views there and great suggestions. What I'm hearing is there's an opportunity to be more ambitious and take a few more risks for the age group, which I think, depending on how your content is being financed, can be very easy or very hard. Let's go to the audience. Let's see if we've got any questions in the audience.
Hello, I'm Ian from Sky.
Oh, hi, Ian.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Totally agree with everything you've said today. I'm speaking to you now as a parent of a 6-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter, and it's really stressful.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say now, like, you know, you put... my daughter was watching Unicorn Academy last month, and yesterday, unicorns aren't cool.
Okay.
And, you know, my 6-year-old son's playing Mario Kart... limited time playing Mario Kart, but they will both sit down and watch Bluey together. Yeah. So they're all over the shop. But I think one of the recent shows that everyone at the school is talking about is Gladiators. Yeah. They're playing it in the playground. They are all like, she's got a bruise on her arm. Oh. How did you get that bruise on your arm today? We're all playing Gladiators. So, and I'm seeing that when a show has people in it, so not just animation, that's resonating with the upper end of this group. And because my daughter wants to be an adult now at 8.
Yes.
And the authority thing was really important, what you said there, because they're pushing authority at 8, I think.
Yeah.
So they need to see an authority figure, because that's quite important, especially when they're at school. But the question I'm going to ask you is that what are your thoughts about shows with real people in them? Because that's often missed. And I think that it is in decline. I think factual entertainment programs with real people in that they can get learnings from. Gladiators has proved that they do watch shows with people in them, and they want to be adults. She also likes watching, weirdly, Alan Carr's Design Interior show.
It's good.
It's a great show.
It's a great show.
Which is a great show, and that's why I loved watching that with her. It was brilliant. But she also wants to watch Grand Designs now, which is weird. So they're all over the place, basically. But the upper end, my 8-year-old wants to be a grown-up now, and occasionally she wants to watch Topsy and Tim. Quietly, without her brother knowing.
Yeah.
So that's the going to the younger end. So everything you've said has resonated. But what do you think about shows with people in them for this audience, Beth?
Yes.
Yes.
We love real people. I think there's a real opportunity. Again, just that story that you told me, like they really are all over the shop, and I mean it's an opportunity for us all to figure out what that is, and it could be a game show, it could be a reality show that, and it doesn't have to be a 4 to 8-year-old. Like obviously they're watching shows with adults in them. I think it's a really great opportunity, and we know that. I mean, like as you were saying, Gladiators, I was like, what about the British Bake Off show? That's nice and calm. But I don't, I was trying to think of like what is calmer for them and shows good values. But I think, look, there's messages in Gladiators as well. But I think that we do need to serve our audience in that way. It's not just animation. In some ways, animation could be seen as too kid-like.
Gladiators is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a real cross-generational program. It genuinely is a show for the whole audience. So it is something that young children, the bridge audience, older children, parents, carers, everybody can watch together. There's silliness, there's fun, there's competition. It's really
Big
a
themes,
beautiful show.
Good versus evil.
Absolutely. Those evil gladiators. Yeah, so I think that's a really astute observation, Ian. We've probably got time for one more.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I work in children's publishing, and I've got a two-part question. So I've seen the results of research consistently commissioned across publishers and by Nielsen, which indicate that for this age range, firstly, humour is so important in stories and books, and secondly, that parents and children are concerned about scaring their children or themselves. So content that used to be appropriate for this age range 10 years ago is now considered as quite scary for this age range. And I wondered what you thought about those two things. So how important you think humour is and how difficult it is to pitch humour appropriately for this age range, and then also about the scary factor. So two quite different factors.
You go. No, I was going to say humor is easier. I think humor is much funnier, and I mean, and travels across the ages. I think scariness is it's harder to know what's scary. We were having this conversation like earlier, that how sometimes watching like seeing a monster isn't as scary as like watching a scene where somebody's creakily walking down the basement stairs. Like that's really scary. So I think that
and what's scary for us is not scary for kids today. And so I use my child as an experiment, unfortunately. But I've let him go with the scariness because I'm such a chicken. And he has a control of his emotions, a control of his reactions, and he can just sit there and watch and analyze it. And I'm just like, wow, that's actually a skill as well.
Yeah.
Like for later in life.
But we do love to be a little scared.
So there's a developmental thing.
Tell us, Nikki.
Well, there's a developmental thing when it comes to being scared. So there has to be a resolution at this age, and quite quick.
Yeah.
But being scared, and there's a lot you can look into this, but being scared is actually a really good way of playing out your fears through what you're watching, particularly as you get older and into the teen years, it becomes even more important. So it has to be treated really carefully, but being scared depending on how you do it, is actually a really good learning skill
Yeah.
for kids. Humour is an interesting one. I think this age group it's probably relatively easy, but I'm always telling my clients, be really careful with humour, particularly as you get 7, because like an 8-year-old, as your daughter said before, they're pretty grown up by now. They can kind of see through sometimes adults trying to do funny things for kids. I think it's potentially a bit older than that, but visual humour, burps, farts, all of that's universal. But I think sometimes you're really careful because sarcasm.
Yeah.
There's a certain age where you get it,
Yeah.
And it doesn't travel.
and it doesn't. So in different countries, and sometimes sarcasm when it doesn't work, it really falls flat in all ages, but particularly with this age group.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm really sorry, but we have run out of time. So I'm Chris Rose. Thank you to the panellists, Katie, Nikki, Beth and Maria. Thank you to our fantastic producer, Yoli Clark and Alison Warner, who exec produced the session. Thank you again to Line Pictures for their support in sponsoring this session. We now need to clear the room.